Hello, everybody. This is video number 2 in my environmental data analytics series. Today, we are going to be doing some data cleaning. We're going to also do some organizing and arranging to set ourselves up for the pivot tables and then ultimately the images and dashboard that we're going to create on video 5. So we're going to start with looking at our column names. So we have date, source, etc. The goal here is to delete any columns that we ultimately don't need. So for example, we know that the source of the data is AQS. There's really no reason for us to have a column called AQS. So we are going to delete that column. Now, before I get started with that, though, I mentioned before that you should always be cognizant of version control. So before we do any manipulation of this data set, we're first going to save it under a new name. We're going to call this V2, and I'll just save it in my downloads folder. So we're going to call it V2, and it'll have a date associated with it. So if we want to know what date we did it, we'll be able to pull that information. All right, so let's just clean up. We don't need our ACS column. Let's go ahead and delete that. We don't need our POC column. Well, actually, let me check the POC column because if there was another number, then I would probably keep it. But since there's only one number, we'll go ahead and delete that, which means that they're probably all uniformly using the same equipment to measure the NO2 levels. Now, for this column, I'm actually going to make this a little smaller. And the reason is because we're going to at some point be using this data set to do some SQL analysis. And SQL is very particular about column names not being too long. So what we're going to call this is, we're going to rename this. Let's just delete that. I think what I'll do is I'll call it NO2. And then I typically prefer underscores to dashes because dashes sometimes imply arithmetic operations. So we're going to go 1 hour, 1 HR for that column. And then I'm also going to put in parentheses ppb, and that just means parts per billion, which are the units that the NO2 is being measured in. Now we can delete the unit column because we don't need that one. Let's see, we'll keep our daily AQ values, AQI values, daily observations. We'll keep those, obviously. Parameter. Okay, we'll delete the parameter column. We'll also, let's see, can we delete? We'll delete the method code. And there's a data dictionary that's associated with this data set. If you're interested in that information, I think I will post a link. I'm actually going to put this project on my GitHub site. So be on the lookout for a link to the GitHub site, which will contain all the information that was used for this study or for this mini project. Okay, so we'll delete that. Let's see, CBSA, we'll delete that. Now, the data that I secured is all Birmingham, Hoover, Alabama area. But if you go to site names, you'll see that there are different sites. So we will, I'll delete Birmingham, Hoover, but you'll want to make a note, and I mean literally make a note that that the data represents Birmingham, Hoover area of Alabama. We'll delete that. We know it's the state of Alabama. And let's see, FIPS, which is, federal designation for an area, Jefferson County. Okay, we delete that, Jefferson County. And eventually I'm going to delete the latitude and longitude once I convert that to zip code. So let's just see how many different ones we have. We have 2, so that means we probably have at least two different zip codes. Okay, so now that I've deleted the unnecessary columns, now I'm going to save it again. And I think one more column I'm going to delete is the NO2 because we already know that we're looking for NO2. So I'm going to delete NO2, and then I'm actually going to rename this Alabama, just so that I know, right? This is just good practice. In case you end up with 50 states and 50 different data sets, you want to make sure you know the different states. So we'll just add ALNO2 to the name, and now it's a little bit long. Let's see, I'll delete some of that off of there. So now we have V2. I think I'll remove the dash between the V2 and AQS. So V2 AQS underscore AL underscore NO2 underscore 2024. We're going to save that. And I think we are done for today. So that's all we're going to do in terms of preparing the data that we're going to use to create data visualizations in our dashboard. Again, I'm going to do a little research, which essentially is going to, what I'm going to do is to look for the zip codes that map to the latitude and longitudes. Because remember, for a longer term project, we would want to map this to demographic data. The zip code is the way that we pair our demographic data with our AQS measurements of pollutants in the air. And that's it for video 2. Thank you, and I hope to see you in video 3.